Welcome to the Green Room. We're here today to talk about enrichment for our dogs, and joining me are Britt and Wendy. Hi guys.
Hey.
Cool. Wendy is a dog specialist. She's been on our podcast a couple of times before, so she's an expert now. And Britt is a team leader on dogs. How are you guys doing?
Good. Doing good.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good, yeah.
Good. And it looks like, Wendy, you're working from home, are you?
I am, yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's really quite busy. Lots of stuff to do. Never a dull moment in Wood Green, is there? Even if you're not actually there.
Absolutely. And Britt, are you on site? It looks like you're Skyping from a phone.
Yes, yeah, I'm I'm Skyping from a phone. I've been working on site throughout all of this. So yeah.
Wow, that's dedication.
But it's also it's almost a bit of a saving grace to, come into work, see the dogs, speak to some people. So yeah, it's perspective a bit.
It's your enrichment, keeping
it's
you
my
safe.
Enrichment, exactly. Yeah.
Which leads us nicely onto Wendy. Could you kind of tell us what enrichment is?
Well, for me, it's my garden.
I wasn't asking you what your enrichment is, but you are more than welcome to share with everybody what yours is, if you want to start off with.
Well, yes, as I say, my enrichment is my garden, and particularly my weeding. However, that's not what we're here to talk about. Enrichment really is the way we use the environment or things in it to give the dogs an activity that uses up a little bit more brain and activity than perhaps they would use if they were in a very barren environment. And so we can use food and toys or lots of different activities to enrich their lives a bit.
Okay. And we obviously use enrichment in our kennels quite a lot, don't we, Britt? Because they are left for periods of time on their own, particularly overnight. So it is really important for our dogs in kennels, isn't it, to kind of keep them a bit sane?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to give them as much as we can. So during multiple times during the day, and especially overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are quite long left for quite a long time.
And why is it so important for dogs in kennels or at home to have enrichment, Wendy? I mean, is a walk and some cuddles enough for most dogs?
For some dogs, usually those that are very mature, a walk and some cuddles may well be enough. But if we go back into kind of the domestication process of dogs and how they live, kind of more of them are living, I'm going to say wild, but feral is kind of what I mean, in the world today than we have pet dogs. And if we look at their lifestyles and the way they live, I can guarantee that actually in many cases they are much happier than some of our pet dogs who don't have a very enriched lifestyle. And if we look at why that is, they're out all day long and they're foraging for their food and socially interacting with the other dogs in the neighbourhood. They're choosing where they rest and they sleep, and they're getting so much to do, so much from their own environment. And then when we compare our own dogs' lifestyles in recent years, they're confined most of the time to the house, maybe the garden too. And then they usually have, hopefully, a couple of walks a day and a little bit of training, but there's not anywhere near as much variety as a feral dog would experience.
But would some people argue that dogs are so far removed from that kind of feral, wild lifestyle that actually they don't have some of those instincts anymore?
I'm sure people would argue that, but then if we look, even in the last 100 years or so, we've changed very much our dogs' lifestyles, and yet we haven't changed their physical makeup. They've still got all the muscles and teeth needed to pull things apart, and the brain power to hunt things down and seek the things out in the environment. And we haven't changed much. Yeah, in the last 100 years, you know, we were feeding our dogs lots of bones 100 years ago, and they were also not kept quite as confined and fenced in as they are now. The stray dog issue has changed in my career, so that just goes to show how quickly it's changed. And we're keeping them in so much more, and yet we can't possibly have changed their physical makeup or their mental makeup in that period of time.
Yeah, fair point. So Britt, how can we sort of enrich our dog's life?
It depends. I mean, the options are endless, but I think it really depends on the individual dog. You want to look at Randy mentioned it earlier, at the age of the dog. You know, a very young adolescent dog versus a dog that's a bit older might have completely different needs. Breed type is something that you want to consider as well. So some breeds really like digging or like chasing. So these are things that you can all take into considerations. Some of the enrichment that we use in kennels are activity feeders, puzzle feeders, so basically products that you can buy in the pet store. But of course you can also make it yourself. So what we've been doing as well a lot is work with you know, cardboard boxes, newspapers, towels. You can get really, really creative in finding the most suitable enrichment for your dog. So what I just mentioned before, this was all food related. Of course, you can also enrich your dog by doing some training, some fun games, scent work. I love to do scent work. So yeah, the options are endless. It really depends on what your dog likes.
Okay, so if your dog's really foodie, what kind of things could you start off introducing to them if they've never done enrichment before, Wendy?
Yeah.
Well, probably the easiest thing, and you know, when I'm looking for answers for owners, I always try to understand their lifestyle and how much time they have on their hands, and how inventive or creative they might be able to be. And probably the first step and the easiest thing to do, if they've got grass in their garden, is to pop out into the garden with their food in their hand, well, probably in the dog's bowl actually, to transport it out into the garden, and then to stand there and just toss a few handfuls on the floor, on the grass, and most dogs will then stand looking at you as if you've lost the plot, because they know that the food should come down in the bowl. But eventually, after you've pointed it out on the floor, they cotton on to what they're supposed to be doing and start to search the grass for the food. And after a couple of repetitions, the owner can very, very quickly scatter the food far and wide across their lawn, and providing their dog's happy to work out there on his own, they can come in and get themselves ready, have their breakfast, get themselves ready for work, and their dog at least has spent half an hour searching for his breakfast out in the garden, so that it's done something before they even go to work.
And then if they can do that, what kind of other, you kind of mentioned activity toys, Britt, and things that you could buy. So what kind of things would you recommend for people?
I mean, you have them from all different sort of brands, but I should have actually, it would have been good if I had one to show you guys, but I don't think I have anything here. So it's basically a rubber chewing toy made from very durable and safe rubber that you can use. And you can pack this toy with food. If the dog's quite new to the whole concept, you pack it very loosely, so it comes out really easily. You really want to prevent your dog from getting frustrated or losing interest straight away because you made it too hard. What I really like about those as well is, especially now the summer's coming, where we had quite good weather last week, is you can freeze them. So yeah,
And what about people that don't have much money? I mean, I guess this stuff is, investing in a Kong, which is the only thing one of my dogs will do. It's a good investment because they are indestructible, aren't they? And they do last a long time.
Yeah.
But especially now when people are under sort of, financial strains, are there any things that they can do that replicate what food puzzles and enrichment toys do, but you don't have to spend much money on them? You kind of talked a bit about cardboard boxes. What about toilet rolls and things? Because we've got plenty of those at the moment.
Newspapers, you can roll some kibble up in a towel. You can get really, really, really creative. So you don't have to spend money. You can just do it from, I sort of save all my muesli, granola boxes. If I order something online, I keep the parcel, like box that came in. So yeah, lots of options. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to spend money.
And your dog's quite a food monster, isn't he, Britt? I mean, I've heard stories. I've heard stories about your dog opening fridges.
Yeah, he opens fridges, freezers, and doors. Yeah, so for my dog, it's it's the greatest thing ever to do some to use a puzzle or an activity feeder. But the main thing that you want to look at is, does the dog need to problem solve in order to get his food? It's all about problem solving.
Okay, so if you've got a dog like a lurcher that's perhaps not quite as
yeah, make it a little bit easier for him.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for saving me there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you can do is, make it a lot easier. You can entice them as well a little bit with, smearing some peanut butter, some cream cheese, sort of on the opening, or where they have to, flick the lid up just to help them out a little bit. Again, you really don't want to create any frustration or any sort of like lack of interest in your dog because you made it too hard.
Mhm. That's good advice.
Yeah.
And I've seen people using things like bottles and things, Wendy, as well, like Coke bottles, that kind of thing. That's all safe to use?
Providing they're monitored, so obviously you wouldn't want to leave a dog that's prone to chewing up and eating pieces of plastic with a bottle and go off out to work. However, if you're there in the room with him or her and you take the cap and the little plastic seal around the edge, around the top, you take that off and then just put some dried complete food in there. Sometimes if you add a little bit of something tasty, like a couple of little tiny pieces of chicken or cheese in there as well to get them started off, it might mean the first couple of sessions you need to be on the floor with them, just pushing it around with your hand so they kind of get the idea of nosing it about, and then eventually they'll pick up that actually if they either pick the bottle up and then drop it, it will come out, or they're nosing it round or patting it with their feet. The breeds that seem to really like that are the dogs that kind of like a little bit of noise in their lives. Many of the bull breeds absolutely love that, and the boxers do. But having said that, my collies loved it too. They're not dogs that particularly like much sound, but yet they really enjoyed crunching up the bottle even after the food had come out. I think it gave them a bit of a thrill actually. But yeah, you've got to watch. You've got to watch that they don't destroy it and then want to chew it. But recycle your bottles still afterwards, so they get an extra use really. And there's plenty of bottles around. We're never short of bottles, are we?
No, absolutely. Especially now when we're all at home, plenty of those around. And some fun ideas as well, Wendy, that children can get involved in, right? So. Like we said earlier, we're all a bit bored at the minute. The kids are a bit bored. They can kind of help make these boxes and make these bottles and then see the dogs enjoy using them. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you got the children to... children are so much more creative than us boring, sloth-like adults. So if we can get them involved in being a little bit more inventive and wrapping the food up and then popping it inside something that the dog can destroy, like a cardboard box, and then the dog can tear it out. But it's also, perhaps hide the box somewhere in the room so the dog has to go and find it as well. just making it a little bit more difficult. And the one thing that I have to say children absolutely love doing with dogs, that's kind of an enrichment activity, and I know it's Brit's favourite subject, is search. So playing hide and seek, not so much hide and seek as in the children hide or the dog hides, but hiding the toy, so that the dog can come and find it. And the children absolutely love doing that activity. Once the dog has learnt that he's coming in to look for his toy, and the children get the opportunity to pop it somewhere and see if they can outwit the dog. And once the dog's joined into that game, they absolutely love that game. So it's a fantastic game to play with children.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm going to try that tonight. I haven't actually tried that yet. My daughter would love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the dogs love it so much. The dogs get such a thrill out of it. So it's helping build a good relationship between the two. Obviously, we've always got to make sure that we manage the interaction when the dog's got the toy, so that there isn't any frustration with the children trying to take the toy off the dog to do the next repetition of the game. But as long as we manage it well, they absolutely love it, the children and the dogs. And actually, I have to say, I think the parents watching too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Britt, you do a lot of, as you said, scent training and enrichment with dogs that were green and with your own dog. You know, if you did have a beagle, a basset hound, something that really had, you know, loved to use its nose, could you get a bit more creative and a bit more tricky with this kind of scent enrichment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can take it as far as you would like. And yes, it's brilliant enrichment for, you know, your hound types, or dogs that are sort of more scent driven naturally. However, you can also do scent work with, you know, a French bulldog, a mastiff, a boxer. So it's possible with all breeds. And they all enjoy it. So you can do it with food or with toys, depending on what your dog particularly likes. If he's quite foodie, I would maybe suggest something like using cheese, because it's quite smelly and cheese is quite sticky. So it's quite nice to, you know, smear it on a wall or stick it under a table. If you're gonna use toys, you can use your dog's favorite toy, or you can really make sort of like an assortment of scent items. So actually, I can show you how because I have it here in my office. You can have sort of like a tin box, because it contains the scent really well. And if I open it, it's full of soft toys, tennis balls, just random items, and in the bottom is some catnip. If you use a toy, at first what you want to do is start playing with your dog with a specific toy, and then gradually you just start making it a little bit harder and harder where you're gonna hide it. So initially you want to hide it where, you know, he can see you, what you're doing, he can see where you're hiding it, and then you make it gradually harder and harder. But I think, I mean, for me personally, the most important thing with searching is that your dog has fun, and it's a really great opportunity to sort of like work together, sort of like be a team and just have lots of fun while you're doing it. And it's incredibly tiring for dogs. If you think about it, I think it's like 1/3 of their brain is completely dedicated to processing like scent information. So yeah, it's really, really tiring, and it's great fun.
Sounds pretty similar to how I taught my kids to do hide and seek in the house, like starting off by hiding in plain sight. And now I can hide in the loft and they can find me. So it's just, like you say, making it easy for them to begin with, and then getting more and more difficult.
Exactly, baby steps. And at any point you see that your dog's not really getting it, or you can see that he's getting a little bit unsure or frustrated, just take it a step back, make it a bit easier. Yeah. Again, it's all about fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of enrichment as, you know, making food toys and boxes and things like that. But actually, like you said, Britt, training is a massive part of dogs enrichment as well, isn't it, Wendy?
Yeah.
And it's something that we kind of do a lot in the beginning when we get a dog or a puppy. And then we think, well, we've trained them to sit and lay down and give their paws, so we're done.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to forget their enormous mental capacity. And yes, we invest well in their puppyhood and then seem to stop. And it seems to be our habit that we stop unless you want to go into competition and do stuff long term with your dog. But there are so many things you can do in terms of training, and they just absolutely adore it. Even dogs that aren't particularly well, if you ask them a question that they know it's something related to training that they've always had positive experiences about, suddenly they light up, even if they're really quite poorly. So it just shows what capacity there is for learning and what effect it has on their emotional well-being.
On that note, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really great to chat with you, and I hope that some of our listeners will take away some ideas on enrichment to do with their dogs, and at least try a few things that you guys have suggested and see what their dogs like and don't like.
Cool.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And as always, if you have any questions or comments from today's podcast or any others that we've done, please do email us and we'll happily read them out and try and answer them. Our email is podcast@woodgreen.org.uk. And as always, if you have any concerns about your pet, if you need somebody to answer any questions you have, please do give us a call. Obviously, these guys are still working. Britt's on site, Wendy's working from home, so we can help you, whatever the question or query you have is. And thank you, guys.
Thank you.